Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 443 and my guest is Dr. Heather Stone. Dr. Stone has treated thousands of women with persistent low thyroid symptoms for the last 19 years. She supports functional medicine and getting to the root cause of disease. She is one of the most experienced clinicians in the space of hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's. And we spoke last April and excited to get her episode on the air. And if anyone out there is in need of this sort of medicine, she's definitely the person to reach out to. And I'll put all that info in the links of the links page on the website of my website, heyhumanpodcast.com. Otherwise, check out heyhumanpodcast.com for those links so to learn about my guests in the show. Hey Human Podcast is on YouTube under official Susan Ruth. I'm on Patreon at Susan Ruthism. My TikTok and Instagram is Susan Ruthism. You can check out susanruth.com to learn about me and my other artistic endeavors and find my albums, my music on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, wherever you get your music. And rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human on Apple, iHeart, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for listening. Be well, be kind, stay healthy, and be love. Here we go. Dr. Heather Stone, welcome to Hey Human.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Nice to see you. Let's jump in. Tell me your upbringing and how it may have shaped you into your work.
That's a new one. I haven't been asked about my upbringing. So just kind of middle America. Well, I'm from South Texas, so it's not necessarily middle America, but middle class.
Texas is its own country. We all know that.
Texas is its own country. I would say that I had a great childhood. It's pretty unremarkable. Just, a typical American childhood. And I think I'm an oldest child. So that's kind of, I think, where I get my tenacity for being an oldest child. But, growing up, my mom and dad were married. They're still married. So my mom, for the most part, was a stay-at-home mom. And I think that's probably what kind of pushed me down this path. Interestingly enough, I thought I wasn't going to do that. I thought that although I think that she is an amazing mom, I wanted something different for my family. And I wanted to have a career and I wanted to go to college. And I was the first one to go to college in my immediate family. So for me, I had big aspirations, and that's kind of what pushed me down this path. And I knew that I always wanted to be a doctor, but I never really knew what kind of doctor. And I think with my own health struggles, it pushed me down the exact right path that I was supposed to go down, which I am super thankful about that.
That was going to be my next question is, as a kid growing up, did you have health issues that were frustrating at best and maybe some doctors listened at? Did you have that experience?
Yeah, I would say whenever I was in high school, I had issues with hormones and menstrual cycle. And, it was here, just put her on birth control. And my mom did not want me to go on birth control. So they said, okay, well, she should just go on progesterone. So she said, okay, well, she can go on progesterone to regulate cycles. Right. And I think that is essentially the extent of how most women's hormones are managed. Is they're managed by symptoms, and nobody did any testing to see, did I actually have low progesterone or what was actually going on with my hormones, or maybe we should do some blood work or anything. So nothing was done, and they put me on progesterone. So then I started having weight issues, and I had issues with my complexion and acne. Again, the solution when I was in college was, well, just go on birth control pills. So I was on birth control in college, and then man, I am really struggling. I am super tired. I cannot lose weight. I was about 50 pounds heavier than I am now. And so I'm like, as I was in school, I was in pre-med. I'm like, maybe it's my thyroid. And this was pre-Dr. Google. So you couldn't just Google it. It was literally looking in textbooks. I go to an OB-GYN and I'm like, I think I got low thyroid. I have all these symptoms. I'm tired. I can't lose weight. My menstrual cycles are a mess. And I don't have a menstrual cycle unless I'm on the pill. And he said, all right, well, let's run labs for your thyroid. And so I come back a week later and he's like, yeah, nope, not your thyroid. So everything's fine. Nothing's wrong. I think maybe you exercise too much. That's why you don't have a period. I'm like, wait, I was thankful for that at that time because I knew what he was saying. He was saying to me that you exercise too much. And sometimes women who exercise too much, they lose their period or their cycle. But luckily, I knew that what he was trying to say was when women exercise so much and their body fat goes down, then they stop menstruating. And I just knew whatever he was saying was not what I was dealing with. So for that moment, I'm like, okay, I'm not believing what he's saying. So therefore, I didn't buy that story. And then as I was walking out, he says to me, oh, by the way, you're probably not going to be able to have kids without fertility treatment. So, we'll handle that when it gets here. And I'm like, thank you very much.
Well, so first of all, he's saying that there's nothing wrong with you that their tests can tell, which is so dismissive. It makes me insane in the healthcare system.
Yep.
And secondly, you know your body.
Yeah. So I look back at that and I was like, I'm so glad that, first of all, I knew enough to know that he did not know what he was talking about, or we could just say he was dismissive or he wasn't really interested in truly figuring out what was wrong with me. He just said, oh, by the way, I'll see you back here when you're trying to have kids. So I was like, you know what? I am not going to live my life this way. This is not how my life is going to be. So I'm going to have to just figure this out. And so then that kind of pushed me down the road of what kind of doctor do I want to be? What do I need to do? And what path do I need to go down to just figure it out for myself? And then once I figured it out for myself, I'm like, holy cow, do you know how many women are dealing with this same issue that really need my help? And as you know, I've gone through different phases of life through having children naturally without fertility treatments and weight loss. And then, moving into perimenopause, going through these different phases, I've been able to help women understand that each phase is not a disease. And that if you can figure out if you have a symptom, it's actually a blessing with your body just trying to tell you that something's not quite right. And you just have to search and figure out where the underlying imbalance is, because your body is born to heal. Like, you are a self-healing organism, and the body knows how to heal, but sometimes it just needs a little bit of assistance, or we need to remove a little bit of interference.
It's hard enough to be a teenager, and then you're going through weight gain and acne and all of that. Did that take some time to get to the other side of?
Oh yeah, a lot. And when I was struggling with all of that, did every diet known to man. I mean, I have done the cabbage soup diet and the don't eat anything diet, slim fast, and you name it. I've done every diet known to man, and I started that in high school. So of course, it shapes your body image and you have these struggles and these ups and downs. But I will tell you that it allowed me to be in a position where I was like, I will do whatever it takes. I just need someone to tell me what to do. And it needed to be the right thing. I mean, I had taken diet pills and done everything that was available just to try, to lose the weight. But it wasn't until I shifted off of the weight and somebody told me what to do to improve my health. And I wanted my health and my function to be as optimal as possible. And then the weight started coming off. And it helped me shift from stopping all these fad diets to what do I need to do to be healthy and to eat and look at food as nutrition instead of, looking at food as the enemy. It allowed me to be in a place where I was open to receiving that. And it allowed me to also be in a place where I can empathize and understand where other women are coming from and the struggles that they have.
What would you say to women especially, and I'm sure it happens to men as well, and people that identify everywhere in between, that when the doctor says nothing's wrong, we can't find anything to test, how do they advocate for themselves and find the right person without making themselves insane on Google?
Yeah. And I think That's pretty much where I catch most women, or I work mostly with women, so that's why I say most women, but men deal with this as well. But I think just having that inner knowing that if you have a symptom, that means there is some kind of imbalance, and it doesn't mean that you have a disease. Right. So it doesn't mean you have a disease or a label or some kind of ICD-10 code that they can bill an insurance company for. But no, it's just the way that your body communicates. And you need to search for a doctor that is going to be on your team and help you go beyond the label, help you go beyond what insurance will allow them to order. Right. So, we're stuck in the drug therapy model, right? And if we want something different than drug therapy, we have to go outside of that model, right? When we're in a drug therapy model, the most frustrating thing is to be in that model but expect something different when there isn't anything different in that model, right? Like drug therapy is diagnose a disease and they're going to either drug it out, cut it out, or burn it out. Like that is their solution. And that is what they're trained. And that is what insurance, the umbrella, pays for. And so I think the biggest frustration is trying to keep going to that model and trying and expecting something different. But if you were for a moment, say, all right, that has a place in my healthcare, right? I may need that at some time, but that's not what I'm looking for right now. I need to find something outside of that system that can work with what I'm trying to do to optimize health. We have to remember that the drug therapy model is to manage diseases. It is not to optimize your health. So as long as we understand what traditional medicine is for and what it's not for, then we can decrease the frustration level, find somebody that might be working outside of that model, and keep people who are in that model that might really help you when it's appropriate.
Hormones are a mother bleeper.
Yes, I just did a 5-day mastering your hormones in menopause with low thyroid masterclass. And it is, I think we did a deep dive and there's so much information. I think I just caused even more confusion. But anyway, it's a huge subject and I could talk for hours on that.
When was your aha moment for what was going on with your body?
The aha moment wasn't until I started to feel better. The aha moment wasn't until I'm like, oh, because I had to trust that the information that I was implementing was going to be right. Right. So I had to trust and get some education behind why I was doing what I was doing. But then once I was implementing it and I gave it time, not 30 days, but I stuck with it, knowing that the intention was to optimize my health. Then my body started to change. And then I'm like, okay, this is, I'm on the right path. My body can do this. I can heal. Another aha moment for me was interesting. I was in line at Starbucks and I was having a conversation with myself, like, yeah, you can just have a scone and a terrible coffee with loads of sugar. It's not going to hurt this one time. And then my other part of myself was, why would you do that? You don't do that anymore. And then I'm like, if I do it, I'm going to feel bad. And I noticed that I had such negative emotion about the food. I'm like, wait a second. Food is not the enemy. I can choose to eat that if I want to choose to eat that. And if you have good energy around eating it, it's less harmful for you than if you beat yourself up after you eat it.
I believe that wholeheartedly. Yeah.
Totally. And then I'm like, wait, it's just really, what am I choosing and what is my motivation behind what I'm choosing? What am I trying to accomplish? And if I choose to have it, I'm going to choose to have it and not feel bad. Or I could choose not to do it and keep moving forward on my goals. But the food is not the enemy. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have hated food for so long because I felt like food was making me fat. Food was making me ill, and it might have been, but food can also be your nutrition, and food can also be very healing. And it's all about, sticking to what your goals and motivations are. Also, if you do choose to eat something that's not on plan, don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, I look at food and nutrition systems the way I look at the education system, that no child is the same for educators to educate. You can't have a rote plan and expect every child to flourish in that plan, just like everybody is different. And you can't expect everybody to adhere to whichever diet and expect it to flourish. Especially, that's not even including allergies or celiac disease or thyroid problems or just in general. Humans are unique and beautiful creatures.
I agree. I mean, for us, in my practice, we have a baseline of recommendations for how someone should start, how they should be eating, but then all along the way, we're tweaking. Okay, your body is not responding as well to that. Let's tweak it with this, or maybe you need more fat, maybe you need less. Like, everybody is so different. That's why I constantly am saying there is not one diet. Like, if there was one diet, then I would be on the beach somewhere with millions of dollars, but there's not one diet for every single person. And you have to really customize, based on how the person's functioning.
Do you do that with blood and fecal tests? How do you find what works for the bodies?
We do a lot of it with blood work. So managing blood sugar is absolutely huge. And you can see how the body responds, how it digests the foods that you're eating and how efficient it is with extracting calories. You can look at blood sugar. So we do continuous glucose monitoring. We look at insulin resistance, lots of different markers based on blood sugar, also some blood tests with food sensitivities and things like that. But you can really look at how much protein somebody needs, how well they digest and utilize carbohydrates. You can look at their gut testing too with all of their microbiome and see how your microbiome is managing all of the food that you're eating. That's why we start with basics and then tweak from there. Because usually if you start with the basics, then it doesn't have to get too complicated.
If somebody had a camp that I could go to, personally, me, Susan, could go to, where for, let's say it's 7 to 10 days, where the food is nutritious, healthy food, good food, maybe an occasional yummy, not that good food isn't yummy, but you know what I mean, like occasional quote unquote treat, that there was doctors or healthcare workers there testing my blood after every meal and monitoring me 24 basically a day for that whole time. I can't even tell you the amount of money I would pay to go to that camp. For real.
Yeah. I do have a retreat space where we do teach people. Right now, the retreat is only for patients that have been through the program for 6 months, but that's kind of going to the next level, going even deeper there. But we do something very similar, and we are checking with all of our patients, not just at the retreat. We have implemented continuous glucose monitoring so that we can see how food is impacting your blood sugar. But also you can see how, like, your adrenal glands are stabilizing your blood sugar through the night. We can see how stress is impacting your blood sugar. I went to a meditation retreat for 7 days about a month ago. My blood sugar has never been so stable ever. And I even was like eating loads of fresh, amazing fruit and papaya and dragon fruit. I'm like, oh, my blood sugar is not changing. This is amazing. And I'm like, it just goes to show you it's not only about the food. It's about your stress
environment.
It's about being in fight or flight. I mean, I was literally not really in a monastery, but it was kind of like that. You're out of your environment, meditating most of the day, eating amazing food, not worried about, anything else. And what's interesting is maintaining meditation practices. Even when I've been back, I can still eat fruit even when I'm here, and my blood sugar doesn't go crazy like it used to. So it's just amazing to me how we look at environment, lifestyle, and how that really impacts our health too.
Yeah, I mean, the adrenals will pack weight on your belly like nobody's business.
Yeah, absolutely. And the crazy thing is we get addicted to those fight or flight hormones, right? So because we're addicted to those fight or flight hormones, a lot of times we don't even notice that we're in fight or flight, but we start worrying about what's happened in the past, right? We start thinking about the past, and then we bring up all of those emotions. So then we're pushing out those stress hormones, or we're worried about the future, about something that hasn't even happened yet. So now we're really stressed out, and we're just in this constant state of stress. And I'll measure some of my patients' cortisol levels, and I'm like, okay, your cortisol is through the roof. And they're like, I'm not stressed at all. I'm retired. Finances are good. I'm like, what are you worried about? Oh my gosh, I am such a worrier. My mom was a worrier and my sisters are worriers. I'm like, what are you worried about? Well, my son's new wife, she's not as nice as I would like her to be and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, you're not stressed about money and you're not going to work, but you're stressing about every other thing in your life that you probably can't change. So that is not helping you on this weight loss and health journey. So working to get into the present moment makes a huge difference.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I started wearing a monitor that tells you your stress levels during the day, among other things. I mean, it tells you all sorts of things. And the thing that I found really fascinating at the end of the day, when I went to look at the levels of stress I had during the day, I saw these odd spikes. And I thought, what in the world am I doing when these stress levels are spiking? And I went and looked, and they were phone calls to people who demanded a lot of attention from me and required and had a lot of drama around them or whatever. And when you're in the moment, you don't even realize what that's doing to you when you're just being a vessel for other people's pain or suffering or drama or tea or whatever you want to call it. It's still making you spike. And I found that really fascinating. It never really occurred to me that that was going to be the case.
But isn't it interesting now that you know that? You have the knowledge that when you are in those calls, you can choose to respond to the stress instead of your body reacting, right? Like you can say, okay, you can get yourself ready before you go into it and be conscious about how you're feeling as you're going through those moments. Because a lot of people will say, I have a stressful life. There's nothing I can do about it. Like, I'm just going to be stressed. And so I am at effect, like I have no control over my life. As a practitioner working with patients who struggle and have problems all day long, and I'm sitting here solving problems for people all day long, I have to be conscious of the way that I am feeling and how I'm being affected. And so we have the ability to respond instead of react, but it takes a conscious awareness of that happening instead of us just going through our day like a pinball machine, right? Like a pinball in a pinball machine, just reacting and feeling like we have no control over our lives and our stress levels. But the way that we respond to stress, and then the things that we do outside of those moments to bring your body back into the present time, is what really matters.
Yeah, I think too, it teaches us a lot about boundaries, the big B word.
Yes.
Boundaries are a big deal. And even, I think the thing that's hard to hammer into people as well is that even something that is quote unquote good for you can be bad for you if you're not treating it with the respect it requires. Like if I'm starving myself and then working out for 2 hours, or if I'm eating a pretty normal diet but not paying attention to what my body needs in order to work out for 2 hours, both those things can do their own kind of damage.
Yeah. I have a prime example of that. Intermittent fasting is a huge deal, right? And all the research shows intermittent fasting is amazing, although it's not, most of the research isn't done on women. I always try everything before I ever implement it with a patient. I want to see can I do what I'm asking patients to do. So I started intermittent fasting, and I can intermittent fast because I don't have to eat. It's less time. I got so much stuff to do. It's easier for me. I'm good to go. No, I can intermittent fast. So I'm intermittent fasting. I'm mostly feeling good, but I don't really notice a change in weight or anything like that. So I go get my blood work done. And my A1C is a 5.7. It is like it's in the pre-diabetic range. And I totally freaked out because I teach people how to lower their A1C. I'm like, what is going on? How could this possibly be?
Is that a blood sugar monitor, A1C?
Okay. So a hemoglobin A1C is a 90-day average of your blood sugar. Okay. So it's the way that they measure how in control your blood sugar is if you're a diabetic, right? So 5.7 to 6.4 is considered pre-diabetic. Anything over 6.4 is diabetic. So I was at 5.7 and I was like, how is this possible? So I'm like, maybe the test was bad. Maybe it was a false test. So I get a glucometer, which is you prick your finger to test your blood sugar. And I'm taking my blood sugar every 30 minutes. This was before a continuous glucose monitor, so we couldn't like just stick it on. So every 30 minutes, I'm like seeing patients and checking my blood sugar here on the side. My blood sugar is really high. But what I noticed is if I fasted beyond 10 o'clock, my blood sugar started rising. And my blood sugar would go up to 120, 125, 130 before I ever ate anything. And so I knew this. I mean, we're not supposed to starve ourselves and we're supposed to eat, but then you got all the other research that really supports intermittent fasting. But for me, it was too stressful on my body. My adrenal glands, I was taxing my adrenal glands too much. In addition to all the work I was doing, and I was exercising and of course working out, fasting, and I've got 2 kids and baseball and all of those things. My body was like, hey, this is not, you don't have enough fuel to keep me going, and I can't keep up with the stress. So then I'm like, okay, what is the tolerance? And so then I was like, okay, if I eat by 10 o'clock, then I'm pretty good. And now that I have a continuous glucose monitor, what I've noticed is my blood sugar is absolutely perfect as long as I eat protein within 30 minutes of waking up. Now my A1C goes between 5.3 and 5.4, which is perfect. That's right where you want it. But I think that we get on these fads of what we think is healthy for us, right? Especially intermittent fasting right now. And I'm not saying intermittent fasting is bad for everybody. I'm saying for me, what I was doing was a good thing, way too much, and my body couldn't tolerate it with all the other stress demands. And I do find that for most of my patients, like most of my patients who have low thyroid, or they have autoimmune issues, or they have other, cardiovascular disease, intermittent fasting essentially is just pushing them over. It's too stressful. When we have blood sugar issues in the first place, we're losing our ability to adapt, which is essentially what we look at to measure longevity and disease processes. And so when you lose your ability to adapt, essentially your adrenal glands are struggling to keep up. And with women, we push through. We got so much stuff to do. We don't have time to be tired. And most of us, if we're tired and taking a nap, I mean, it is like the end of the world's coming or something. So we push through until we're like dragging our bodies around just to get through the day. We're dreaming about going to sleep again as soon as we wake up. And it's like, but I got to lose this weight. So I'm going to intermittent fast. And I'm going to work out. And I'm going to do all these things. And it's like, we're just driving ourselves further and further into dysfunction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where are you? So I could come see you.
I'm in Texas, but we do have a virtual practice.
Yeah. I mean, it's so frustrating.
Until we get to a place where we're no longer willing to tolerate where we're at, that's when we actually make changes. And it's unfortunate that we have to get there, but a lot of times we do have to get there until we're ready to make change.
Have you seen that COVID has put a wallop on a lot of people health-wise post-COVID?
I think that we are dealing with some unique challenges post-COVID, but I would say it's a handful of people, not like a big majority. I've seen some things that were very unusual. I mean, I was thankful I've been in practice for 20 years before COVID even started. So when things were really unusual, like liver enzymes jumping into the hundreds when someone had been completely normal before, I have seen things. I've seen patients, have weird stuff with their cardiovascular system that we really didn't see before. But for the most part, I would say you can work to restore function. Sometimes, I have seen like a handful of autoimmune patients that I have not been able to get back to pre-COVID status, but that's certainly not the vast majority.
Autoimmune disease is cruel because it doesn't really have a rhyme or reason, and it can just happen one day.
Yeah. And I think, when we're dealing with autoimmunity, it's usually genetic. But that doesn't mean that you don't have control over it, right? So when we study epigenetics, we know that our genes are turned on and turned off by the environment that they're exposed to. Now, when I first learned that, when I think about environment, I think about outside. I think about the toxins. I think about maybe the food that we eat. I think about water, air, those kinds of things. But the more you dig in, yes, all of that is accurate. But also, the environment is the emotional environment that your genes are also exposed to. The false beliefs or the beliefs that we have also is what our genes are exposed to that turns them on and off. But if we look at autoimmunity and we look at what causes or triggers the immune system to attack the body, there's all kinds of things that you have to consider. So first of all, like when we have insulin surges, right? So when we eat bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, cookies, cakes, candy, soda, or when we don't eat at all, we cause insulin surges, right? So then that will trigger your immune system to attack the body. Also, insulin surges will make you gain weight. It's almost impossible to have a weight issue if you don't have a blood sugar problem. I see, and that includes, it's not just diabetes or prediabetes, that is the metabolic resistance, that is, or metabolic syndrome, that is hypoglycemia, that's blood sugar that oscillates or has a lot of variability. So blood sugar is huge. We look at adrenal function, stress hormones. We look at your sex hormones like estrogen and testosterone surges will trigger the immune system to attack the body.
Or help it. They say orgasms, right? That's probably a nice surge. It's supposed to be good for you.
Yeah, it's supposed to be good for you, but you do have to consider, right? Like a surge, we don't really want to have hormonal surges. Now, when we're menstruating, we do have peaks and valleys, right? That's what creates our cycle. But we're not really supposed to have big surges. You want to have healthy levels of testosterone so that you have a good libido, sex drive, orgasms, all that stuff. But you don't want to really have these big surges because is what causes the immune system to attack the body. But that's not what happens in normal life either. Like you're not supposed, like even as a menstruating female, we don't have necessarily big surges of testosterone. We have rolling cycles of testosterone. And especially when we're postmenopausal, we're supposed to have healthy levels of hormones, not big surges, right? So healthy levels is really important, but it's the surging of those that will cause the immune system to attack the body. And food sensitivities, underlying infections like I see bacterial, viral, parasitic infections all the time. And there's no symptoms, but it's causing the immune system to attack the body. We can look at biotoxins or mold toxins or Lyme or heavy metals. All of those things trigger the immune system. So what it might seem as though when you have an autoimmune condition, you don't have a lot of control over what happens, or you don't have control over the flare-ups or even of it turning on. You actually do have a lot of control over that, and you can put autoimmune conditions in remission, but you have to do the appropriate testing to figure out what are the triggers you're dealing with, right? So you said you have celiac, I've got Hashimoto's. We both have autoimmune conditions. Both have the same triggers. But what triggers you might be dealing with are going to be different than the triggers that I might be dealing with. So you've got to test all of them and work simultaneously to address them. A lot of frustration comes with autoimmune patients because we might work on one or two triggers, but we leave like 10 over here that aren't handled. And so then we feel like we're not getting anywhere. And so really looking at you as a global person instead of picking one thing or another thing and then feeling like we're not getting anywhere is where the challenge is.
Also, I feel like autoimmune just isn't sexy to medical world.
Well, think about this, Susan. It's a drug it out, burn it out, or cut it out. So they can't cut out your immune system and they can't burn out your immune system, but they can suppress it with drugs. But a lot of times, it's like, well, are we creating worse problems than what they are dealing with anyway? And so when they look in their toolbox, there's nothing there. And so, yeah, they're going to be like, yeah, I don't know what to do with you. I can just give you a biologic and we can shut down your immune system. Other than that, I don't know. So they're really not trained to help optimize function. They're not trained to balance and work with the body to improve symptoms. They're going to drug it out, burn it out, or cut it out. And so that doesn't really fit with autoimmune patients very well, which is why it is a huge disservice or a big missing piece in traditional medicine.
Does big pharma and insurance companies, do you wake up with horse heads in your bed or anything like that? Or are they letting you do your thing?
Well, I have had my challenges, but I would say this. I think that, traditional medicine has its place. And I think that for some people, they want that because it is an easy, quote unquote, solution. And they're not ready to make big changes. They would never be a good fit for what I do because they want the easy, simple solution. And some people never move into a place where I'll do whatever it takes to get better. They just are, this is life, this is how it's going to be, and that's how they go. And then, I truly like for people who have low thyroid, and when your thyroid is not producing thyroid hormones, you need thyroid replacement hormone because if you don't get your thyroid hormones balanced, then it's a trigger for the immune system, right? Like you'll keep being in this vicious cycle. So I do think that there's a time and place for that system, but it doesn't really fit the mold for people who are trying to optimize their health, right? And so I think that they both serve a purpose.
Do you feel that autoimmune diseases can be reversed in some cases? Not all, but some of them?
Yeah, so we don't necessarily say the word reverse, but we say put into remission. And I would say that many, many, many can be put into remission as long as you're handling the underlying root causes or the triggers. Now, no, autoimmune diseases, the reason we say remission is because they can come back pretty easily. Meaning like if you Hashimoto's, we can't eat gluten either because gluten triggers the immune system to attack the thyroid and the cerebellum and mostly your gut too. So the studies with Hashimoto's is mostly to the thyroid and cerebellum. But let's say my antibodies were completely negative. But if I went and I splurged on, a piece of cake, well, those antibodies are going to come right back. So we have to be very careful about maintaining balance, making sure that we're always checking triggers, right? So even though I don't have any symptoms, my diet is still right. I play around with it, but I'm always checking my labs to make sure that my labs are in the optimal range and am I doing what I need to do? How's my thinking? How's my meditation? How's my stress? To keep it where I don't have any symptoms and my immune system is not attacking anymore. And it's crazy because when you have an autoimmune condition, any autoimmune condition, you're at risk for developing multiple autoimmune diseases. And so in order to stop yourself from collecting these labels and these diseases, you've got to work to stabilize the immune system and get it balanced. And it has to be a lifelong thing. And I think a lot of people who have autoimmunity, once they get to a place where they're good, they think, okay, I'm good. I don't have Hashimoto's anymore, so I'm going to go back and eat gluten. And so it's like, okay, that you missed the point. Or whoever gave you the information didn't give you the right information to allow you to maintain where you were at. So this has to be a lifestyle. The goal is no symptoms. The goal is optimal function and optimal labs. The goal is to not develop all these other autoimmune issues. And I think it's interesting because with autoimmune conditions, sometimes we can go down the path of why me, and we feel like something's wrong with us, or why do I have to be this way and nobody else has to eat this way? And, but this is one thing I will tell you is that I have had patients say, my husband can eat anything he wants and he is totally fine. And I just say, how many medications is your husband on? Oh, he's like on 4 or 5 medications. I'm like, you're saying he doesn't have a weight problem, but he's not fine. So our perception that other people don't have to eat healthy to be healthy, that is not true. So what you might see on the outside, a lot of times we have this stigma that if you're thin, you're healthy, but that is absolutely not the case. And most people in the United States have some autoimmune disease or another. They have major blood sugar issues. And so don't let people say that they don't have a gluten sensitivity, because I'm telling you that the studies show that most do, or they have their own food sensitivities, whether it's that or not. But I think it's important to know that this is a lifestyle and you're making a choice to eat well and be healthy. And it can't be a pity party like, poor me, nobody else has to do this. Everybody should be doing it. They're just choosing not to do it.
That makes complete sense. Do most of the people that work with you then wear like the continuous monitors and do those sorts of things to in the beginning? And if that's the case, how does insurance come along for the ride with you? Or is this all people have to come to you on their own?
Most patients that we accept, yes, they do wear a continuous glucose monitor in the beginning. So we can see like how they're doing, how stable is their blood sugar, how's food impacting. And then as we start to implement solutions, do we have their blood sugar regulated? And then we keep up with them just through blood work after that. Insurance does not pay for continuous glucose monitors unless you're on insulin. We have a way to get these glucose monitors that, even if insurance was paying for them, they're not that much more expensive, even if insurance was paying. We get discounted prices for patients that go outside of insurance.
Okay. I think that's important to note, just since insurance is a tricky business.
When you work with a practitioner, like I'm a member of a co-op. So a bunch of doctors get together and we buy down the cost of the blood work. So the blood work that I do with my patients, like if you went through insurance, it's about $3,500. But for a cash paying patient, it's only $229. So $229.
That's the difference in the markup? Lord.
Yeah. So it makes it easier. It's about 10%. So, and the crazy thing is that these lab companies are still making money even on the 229, that we do. And it's absolutely crazy, the markup that happens between the lab and the insurance company. And then it falls back on the patient. And it's hard to do a lot of testing because it can be a financial burden, but not if you're working, with someone that understands that and is outside of that. And for us, we don't mark up our test at all. We just give it to our patients for wholesale because it's more important for us to have the data so that we can apply the treatment than it is for us to mark up the testing or have a patient not be able to do that. I see it differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time, and I hope anyone listening that's got some issues will reach out, or at least maybe start to think about the journey toward health and feeling better. The truth of the matter is we don't have to feel awful all the time.
Yeah, I think that's really important because as we age, the excuse that we get is that you feel this way because it's your age, and that doesn't allow us to do anything about it. Like, what are you going to do that I don't know how old you are. What am I going to do that I am 46 years old or 47? Well, there's nothing you can do about your age, but there is stuff you can do about your physiology. And so it's never normal to have a symptom. I don't care what age you are. And if you think about that, like if it was because of your age, then every single person at that age would have that ailment. I was talking to a patient earlier today, and she said that she talked to her doctor. She gets these little blisters on her hands, and then they pop, and their hands peel, and then they itch, and they start bleeding. And I'm like, oh, I know exactly what that is. But then her doctor said, the reason you have that is because you're 48. And she goes, Dr. Heather says it's not because of my age. And I'm like, okay, it's not just because I say that. Why do you think that? She goes, because not every 48-year-old has this stuff on their hands. I said, exactly. So it's just your body trying to communicate with you that something's not right. Now let's go about fixing that. Right. But if she thought, well, it was just her age, then she would say, well, this is a symptom that I have to live with for the rest of my life. And it's important for us to remember that our bodies are born to heal. We are a self-healing organism. The body can heal, and you're not supposed to be sick, and you're not supposed to have symptoms.
I have a guy friend that has that same thing, and it usually flares up in his deep stress times. And when it first started happening, he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh, this is just a skin rash. It's fine." I said, I think it's some sort of an autoimmune. I think your body's attacking you with stress.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
God, it's just so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Anyway.
So if for somebody's listening that has that, one of my best friends, when she eats gluten, it happens. And my niece and my sister, if they eat any dairy or gluten, it happens. And as soon as they get that out and then clean up their gut, then, it all clears up. So it could be a food sensitivity, but you're right. Any stress just adds, it's a load, right? Food sensitivities are a stress too. So it's the load of stress that the body can tolerate.
So fascinating. And the food in the United States, at least, a lot different than the food elsewhere, because I know that when I was in Europe eating, when I was in Italy eating, when I was in Greece eating, I felt awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is the way that we process our food here, right? Especially when it comes to gluten.
But even a clean diet, because I've stayed away from gluten the minute I was diagnosed. I might get it by accident occasionally because it's a micro thing that happens just in kitchens. But I'm talking about the fruits and vegetables, the thing, yogurt, all those things.
Yes, it is everything, unfortunately, in our food system. And it is pretty eye-opening when you look at the ingredients of the food that's sold here versus the food that's sold in Europe. Like, they put poisons and toxins in our food here that they don't allow in Europe. So they alter the ingredients so they can sell it over there. I'm like, what is going on? But it is pretty crazy, our food system here. It's sometimes heartbreaking.
Yeah. Dangerous. It's dangerous to eat. Tell people how they can find you.
They can find me in 2 places. I wrote a book called The Thyroid Transformation Blueprint, and they can get that on Amazon. Or I have a Facebook group called Happy, Healthy, and Lean. At the moment, I think we're at 27,000 ladies in that group, and it's such a great support system. And that's where I typically do a monthly masterclass, and I do Thyroid Thursday. So I deliver loads of content there.
Is that an all-female group, or
Yep, it is an all-female group.
Do you have a male-oriented one as well?
No, not at this time. I really, for the moment, I am just focusing on women.
Do you have a website? Yes, aside from that group.
I have a practice website, but the best way to get to me is Happy, Healthy, and Lean on Facebook.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for all of this information.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Dr. Stone. I really appreciate it. Thank you for listening, everyone. Get healthy, be healthy, stay well. Love your body. Love the food you put into your mouth, all the good things. Thank you for being in the world and helping people.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate it. I really appreciate that of you, and more power to you. And I wish you already have great success, but I'm just really glad that you're out there doing what you do. So
you're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human on Apple, iHeart, and Spotify podcast places, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.